Hello, and welcome everybody to this illustrious third episode of the now soon-to-be famous 6DOF Reviews podcast, because I promised I would do that every time. With me in the studio today is, of course, our illustrious leader, the man behind the mask, the man with the memory of a goldfish, Monsieur Omar Camel. Omar, hello.
Hello.
Tell me, what was the fancy hat you were just wearing? That looks nice.
It is. It's a new hat. It came out a couple of days ago, and we got our hands on it. Meta were kind enough to send us a review unit, and it's pretty cool. It's the MetaQuest 3S.
It's the 3S.
Yes.
Very sweet. Well, I look forward to asking you many questions because, as Omar said, Meta were kind enough to send us a review unit, not multiple review units.
Not multiple review units.
So I will ask you, on behalf of all of our sweet viewers, I will ask you the pressing questions, the hot topics that we want to know. But before we get on to that, welcome everybody to a big release day in the history of Quest. We've just seen released the Quest 3S. I think there's big hype, as can be seen by the fact that there are a great many games releasing today for your gaming pleasure or mispleasure. Which will it be? Which indeed? Well, on the docket today, games that we have tried, that we have played, that we are interested in telling you all about, sweet viewer, is the remake of The Elder Statesman of VR, Arizona Sunshine Remake. We shall also be telling you... Oh,
it's not the remake of Arizona Sunshine Remake, it's just the remake of Arizona Sunshine.
Well, you quite...
Because you said remake of Arizona Sunshine Remake.
This is why he's the editor, everybody, because he... little pedantic nuances, and he's like, actually, it's not quite... You've used a semicolon. It should be a colon. Thank you, Omar. I feel edited.
Thank you.
We shall also be conducting our best selves in a little bit of Maestro, which I will review for you. Then we'll be having a brief conversation around Does It Stack? And we will also be doing an impressions, mind you, not a full review, but an impressions of the brand new Quest 3S, where I will ask a great many questions. Now, after that, guys, we are men of our word today. We said we would let you decide on what our topic of conversation would be, and you did decide. And so today, Omar and I will be discussing which flat screen games would we love to see ported into VR. That is the topic of discussion that you wanted, and thus you shall have it. So I'm now going to hand over to sweet Omar to tell you a little bit, or start talking to you a little bit about Arizona Sunshine, the remake. We'll let you know, though, our full thoughts will come in the form of a long-form review, our traditional style, at the hands of our sweet, sultry Doc Neal, who unfortunately was sounding too much like Tom Waits to join us today owing to illness. But just to kick it off on this, the launch day of the remake, let's have a chat about what's going down in the sunshine of Arizona.
Arizona Sunshine Remake is pretty good. It's been a little bit of a weird experience for me because, like I told you, when we played multiplayer with the pink glasses of nostalgia, when I first put it on, it looked about as good as I remembered it being originally, but of course it doesn't look originally the way I remember it being originally. This is like when you remember Echo the Dolphin from the Sega days and you think it looked beautiful, but then if you turn it on today, it just looks like a blocky mess of low polygon, murky graphics underwater. I mean, it's sort of that situation. The game does look much better than its original, and it takes looking back at the original and then looking back at the remake to see the big difference if you haven't played it in a long time. But yeah, they've done a very good job. It feels to me more like they rebuilt the entire game using the Arizona 2 Sunshine, not that they tried to sort of remaster. I mean, I think it really is a remake in the full sense of the word. They just remade it with the tech that they have now that they use for Arizona Sunshine 2. So it's got the mechanics that you would find in Arizona Sunshine 2. It's got the sort of level of control that you have. It doesn't have any of the jank that maybe, you know, existed previously. It's just overall good. It is Arizona Sunshine in terms of plot, in terms of the game, and that's not a bad thing. That was one of the best single player shooter campaigns, and it had the horde mode, whatever. But now, of course, you can play it all multiplayer, even with a campaign. It's just a good game. I still think Arizona Sunshine 2 is better, but partly that I feel that way because of Buddy.
Yeah.
It's very easy to feel that way because of Buddy, because he carries a lot of emotional depth, you know, into the game. He brings a lot of emotional depth into it, and the relationship between you and the dog. But even then, Arizona, what's that?
Sorry to jump in, but not just that. Buddy was a neat mechanic as well for when you've got hordes of zombies coming at you. Crowd control, like taking down that one that's just about to get to you while you're reloading. The extra 2 holster slots that Buddy gives you. There's
Absolutely.
a lot that, but like I 100% agree with you around the
But
emotion.
he brought a lot into the mechanics as well. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. But again, Arizona Sunshine, the original, the voice acting is really good. It's as good as it ever was. It just a phenomenal job. It really carries the story. Part of the real attraction of the game is how you get into the character. The character is delirious almost. He's desperate, and it's gallows humor all the way through. It's got a very distinct tone to the character. The character is very well written, very well delivered, and he just carries a lot of weight.
I think phenomenally well performed. You and I were having this conversation when we were playing it together.
Yeah.
But that mania that he brings into it, whether it's at the height of his elation or the depth of his despair, I personally think that that's some of the best voice acting that I've played through during the course of any game that I can think of. I'm ashamed I haven't looked up the man's name, and I will. Well, at some point I'll come back and I'll give him the appropriate dues that he is due. But I just think that it's a fairly short campaign, and it is a lot of walk forward, clear the area, walk forward, find the key, clear the area. Like there's nothing hugely innovative being done in terms of that gameplay loop. But a huge part of what really keeps you going, like I loved playing the remake, mate.
Sky Soleil.
Guy Soleil, there you go. Guy Soleil, if you are listening, I don't know why you would be, we're a very small channel, but if you are, bravo. I don't have a stand. I have to hold this. Otherwise, I would clap. This is the sound of one hand clapping.
But definitely, bravo on a job excellently done.
Mate, just outstanding performance. It really is. I've never been as invested in a video game character. I just think that he's done a wonderful job. But I think that adds so much depth and value to the idea of walking forward, clearing an area, finding a key, and moving forward again, which is, I think, a simplistic overview of many linear campaign games. You could probably break Half-Life Alyx down to a similar sort of thesis if you wanted to.
That's probably true. But yeah, very good. And again, with the remake, you've got the extra DLC campaigns. It's just a great game. It's just a great game. If you like zombie shooters, or if you just like shooters or a cool story, it works for all of those sort of tastes.
I believe, on a personal level, that it's the best shooting in VR. Like with conventional weaponry, if you're talking about using a pistol or a shotgun or a rifle, for me, I think it is the best gun mechanics that I've played. Like it suits me down to the ground. And another thing, as I said to you when we were playing, when I play, after I've played In Death, if I ever pick up a game that has a bow and arrow, that is my benchmark. If you're not hitting the same bow and arrow physics of In Death, then really you could have tried a bit harder or maybe gone for that. And to me now, that is where Arizona Sunshine has landed for gunplay.
I'm going to slip in the Light Brigade. The Light Brigade also has very good shooting. It just feels good to shoot.
And you know what? And that's a perfect segue for the point that I was about to make, though. Do you know what they both have in common that other games don't so much? It's the quality of the audio. The audio sells the
Sells
impact,
the
that
shooting.
chunky, crunchy, those headshots really sound satisfying.
Got
The
weight.
weight of the
Yeah.
shot. You know what? They both have that in common is
They both
the
have excellent sound design when it comes to the shooting. That's absolutely true, and it sells the shooting dramatically.
and it I think there are a lot of people that probably won't even be cognizant of the fact that that's the thing that's really giving it depth and resonance. You just
Yeah.
shoot and you go, well, the aiming must be fine. Like, this is good. I've lined up my
Yeah,
head.
yeah, but you're absolutely right.
I saw an interview with the chap who he was the lead sound designer for Arizona Sunshine. His name Jonathan, and then he has a name that I cannot remember. It's Vander Slumpkin, Wishley Bumpkin. Sorry, mate, if you watch this. As far as I'm concerned, like the way he was talking about how they approach sound design in that, I think he's the gold standard. Doc will give his scores, and Doc is our official reviewer, and I will bow to him on whatever he says on this particular topic. But to throw my own personal view in, like, it's a 9 out of 10 for sound. And I think so often sound design is overlooked and just kind of chucked in as opposed to really a feature. And I think this is just huge testament to what you can do with great sound design. So I think my only concern, really, otherwise it would be a categoric thumbs up from me, is value for money. And I think it's something that it's sometimes when we get given review copies of games, it's quite easy just to go, I enjoyed this so much, I can recommend it, without thinking, well, actually, would I have paid £45 for that? Would I have dipped into my pocket for it? So something to consider. Wait till you hear Doc's full thoughts, see what the sweet doctor has to say about the game. But my take is just be wary of the fact that you're looking at about 5 hours worth of campaign play if you play it through once. I personally will play it through a couple of times.
Fair enough.
So now I'm going to do this thing that I do. I wish I didn't have to hold this, because when you start the level, you tap Maestro. So Maestro, we mentioned a couple of weeks ago, and Omar and I had very differing takes on the demo. The demo came out, was one piece of classical music that you could conduct your way through, and I was smitten. And Omar, I don't think you were smitten. You were less than smitten.
Yeah, I wasn't quite smitten. But then again, I've only played the demo and I've only played it once. So, take my opinion with a massive disclaimer.
Fair enough. Well, for me personally, guys, I thought that the mechanics were about as good as I've seen from a rhythm game in terms of being something that's innovative and something new. So originally released as a demo on App Lab with a single song that became very, very popular, and the developer received a lot of demand to turn it into a full game. Partnering with SideQuest and Creature, I believe, is the publisher. Here we are now, and we have a fully fledged hand tracking or controller based rhythm game where you get to conduct an orchestra. So you get, and I should have taken note of this, you get a number of pieces of classical music. It's quite a decent number. I'm going to say between 12 and 15 pieces of classical music that you can conduct. There's also a few jazz standards thrown in there as well. Quite interestingly, at least 2 of them were popularized by the movie Whiplash. So you get Caravan and you get Whiplash that you can also conduct, and that's quite a lot of fun as well. Basically, you don't have all of that at your disposal right from the beginning. You're trained as a conductor. You have a very, very French assistant who is just brimming with ennui as he graciously agrees to assist by taking your choice of music to the stage manager. Nicole, we must do this for him now. And it's the voice acting's fun, and the bit of pompous character is quite fun as well. Your goal is to play through all of these pieces of music with your orchestra, achieving a 5-star rating. And if you achieve your 5-star rating, you will continue to unlock new pieces of music and new cosmetics as well. Different batons, different environments that you can play in, different costuming for your orchestra. Now, we've had rhythm games that make you swing swords or lightsabers or punch things or shoot things or dance or wave maracas around, and they've all achieved, and many of them have achieved. But I think what Maestro does better than all of them, and I'm not saying it's the best, but what it does better than all of them is give you a range of gestures and mechanics to use while you're in the rhythm of the game, while you're hitting that flow state. So, for example, Beat Saber, perfect example, you're swiping in the correct directions as you're supposed to. There's not really too much else to it. It's really just about nailing the direction and the rhythm. Pistol Whip, again, you're dodging bullets, but you're just shooting. Audica, again, shooting. All of these games give you the one thing that you need to do, and then you perfect that to the rhythm. What Maestro does really well is creates this blend of techniques that you will feel instantly familiar with if you've ever seen a conductor or a Bugs Bunny cartoon with a conductor, which is who I like to think I am when I'm playing it. But in addition to the baton, keeping time with that sort of motion, so you've got lefts, right, ups and downs, which feel perfectly what you'd expect. You're also raising the tenor, you're dropping it down. My favorite one is the one where you raise it and then shoop, you cut it off like that, and you've got to get real. That's the one. Yeah. You're pointing at things like, so when there are big cymbal crashes or the timpanis come in, you got to point to the specific musician that you're after. So you'll be conducting over here and then point to that guy because you need that big crash to come in. This would be much better if I wasn't holding this microphone, by the way. What it really does is it separates your body, so you're using both hands, left and right. This hand has very specific functions it's supposed to do. This hand has very specific functions it's supposed to do. Your attention is spread across 180 degrees in front of you, and there's wonderful telegraphing. So if you're focusing on the string section, or I think it's the winds that are over here, and you're conducting them, when that big shot that you need to cue in from the timpanis happens over there, you see it in your peripheral vision. You see the thing kind of getting smaller, so you know to quickly turn. Or you don't even have to turn. I can be conducting over here and then just be like, bam! A no-look shot. And it feels great. Like, it really, really feels empowering and engaging, and it's the best set of rhythm game mechanics that I've come across. I just think it's really fantastic.
Is there any negative feedback when you screw up? Because I hate rhythm games where if you screw up, the music just keeps going. I mean, I don't remember if
that's a bit further down in my notes, but yes, I'll answer that question now. And it's a really classy little touch. If you just mess up a little bit while you're conducting, one of the instruments will play a bad note. So you just hear this, and you know, you just keep going. If you mess up a few times in a row, you start to get the crowd behind you booing. And one of the cool things that starts you off is to start the game, like your orchestra is there, but you have to turn in 360 to view the crowd, and you're in this concert hall full of people, and you take your bow, and then you turn back around to your orchestra, tap, 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 and up like this. So you're aware that your crowd is there. And as you're playing, if you're not performing really well, you will start to get, oh, come on. So it gives you that direct feedback if you're not performing well. The other thing I'll say is, for a rhythm game to have varied mechanics and to use hand tracking as well, I thought the delivery was near flawless. There wasn't a single time where I dropped a beat and I felt that was unfair. Now, we can't mention which one it is, but both you and I played another rhythm game very recently, and that did not feel the case at all. There were a great many times where points were lost and you kind of went, I call bullshit. That's not fair. I did the thing. That never happened to me once. Not once did that happen to me. Not
even with the hand controls.
Well, think about the hand controls, really. You've got a baton. They recommend that you get a pencil or a chopstick or something like that, so you've got something to wave. I was just doing this one. It's not like a finicky thing where it's really going on your fingers. It's just checking, are you going in the right direction? So, quite often when you're doing this on big notes, you have to come down with both hands and you have to strike hard, and it measured that perfectly. There was nothing that I faulted on with that.
That's excellent.
Let's see, I've covered that. One thing I will say, one little gripe I had, is that the gear step between normal and difficult, and there's only the three difficulty modes. It felt like there should have been another step in between, because...
So it's what, easy, normal, difficult?
Yeah. Okay. Normal is quite easy, to be honest with you. So normal to me felt like easy. I felt like there should have been another difficulty in between the two, because on normal you're not using the full range of gestures. You don't get to do that one quite so much, and you're not using both hands kind of at the same time. Then you step into difficult, and that's got you conducting with this hand, and this hand at the same time has to be pointing, lowering, raising, and it gets hectic, man. It gets really, really hectic. And I just think that there could have been something in between, like normal.
You feel difficult is more like expert, and there should have been a difficult between the normal and the
100%. So that's kind of one of my only little pieces of feedback. Otherwise, I thought it was really, really, really great. The sound and graphics are pretty good. Like the sound. What can they really do? It's like a piece of music playing around you. It's detailed enough from a spatial point of view that as you're raising, like, you're pointing to the strings and you're raising the strings, you kind of get the sense that they're getting a little bit louder for you. But otherwise, it plays the music that it's supposed to play. There are really nice touches. There's one, it kind of doesn't make sense, but once you take that out of your mind, there's one setting that you can play in where the concert hall is behind you, but looking out past your orchestra, you've got a French Revolutionary setting. And as you're hitting the bigger notes, cannons are blasting and things are happening. These big theatrical things are happening. And it's fucking wicked. Like, it is so cool. And you really, like, if you're getting into it and you point at the timpani and the timpani happens or the cymbal happens and then a cannon goes off in the background, you just feel like it feels wonderful.
So that makes me ask about the graphics and the environments and how many environments you've seen, or how you feel about it.
3 to 4 environments. You can also unlock costumes for your orchestra. So I had them playing in the garb of French peasants, like 16th century or 17th century French peasants. I had them in 1920s slapper gear, like swing time era gear. So you can unlock all of that, and you've got these different halls that you can be in. But it's a bit of window dressing. Like, it doesn't change things too much.
Yeah, it's not going to change.
You can unlock different batons. And I thought, like, that one of them is a silver spoon. And I hated conducting with that. There was something about the angle that it came out from your hand that I felt like it was really wrong, and it threw me off. Whereas the feather or the cigarette holder, like the long 1920s cigarette holder, that was fun to conduct with. So overall, like, all those little touches, like different gloves, different things, they're nice. You enjoy unlocking them as you go through. The big thing with this game around longevity, because as far as I'm concerned, from a design and implementation point of view, it's fantastic. Like, it's really, really wonderful. It's a tremendous rhythm game. Your success with this game, your longevity with this game, your enjoyment of this game is really going to resonate around what is your relationship with classical music. And for a lot of people, that's not what they're into. Now, I like to pretend that I'm a cultured individual. I have appreciation of classical music, and almost all of the pieces that it provides you with, I've heard it before. And I'm like, yes, of course I know this piece of music. Am I rushing to go in and keep playing over and over again? No, sadly, I'm not. Despite every piece of glowing feedback I've just given about this game, after about 2.5 hours, maybe 3 hours, I'm not rushing to go back in, because I don't really want to play a 6-minute Tchaikovsky piece or what have you. I'm not drawn back into it.
How many pieces again?
There's 12 to 15, give or take. I'd have to go back through and count them. It's a very decent selection. You've got slower pieces. You've got slightly more up-tempo pieces. You've got some that are 2.5 minutes. You've got some that are 6 minutes. So there's great variety in there. And again, those jazz pieces really do help. But the thing is, the jazz pieces, the time signature it's wacky. And again, like, you try to groove to it, but also for most people, I think that it used to a very standard 4/4 tempo. It's just going to be a little bit challenging to really hit all those marks, particularly on difficult. So here's the kicker. When you do the tutorial right at the start, it's about the third or fourth technique that it shows you. They do a little hip hop number, and it's not like an actual piece of music that you know. But what it does is it gives you a nice bouncy beat, and the strings all come in, and the horns are quite poppy, and you're using all of the techniques that you use in the game. And man, that feels great. Like,
you were hoping that it would have more of that sort of stuff, like modern sounding things played by the orchestra.
If they could give us, like, and I again, I think I've spoken to you about this. There's a string quartet that does tool covers.
They did the Metallica. Yeah, they did some really cool stuff. I don't remember her name though. I always forget her name.
Same, but I've never realized how dirty a cello can be until you hear a cello putting out a tool bass line, and you're like, oh, that's good. So if more things were to come out in this game that gave you orchestral variants of slightly more modern music, or if they were to open it up to modders to do something similar, I will tell you categorically this would be my favorite rhythm game. I would, because of the breadth of gestures that it uses and the proficiency with which it's been implemented. All you need to do is give me a track selection of things that I'm really going to bounce to, and this will be my favorite rhythm game. Maybe second favorite. Pistol Whip is a hard act, but I'm talking top tier. Top tier. Where it is now, I thoroughly recommend it. It's been so well produced. Get some culture in your life. Go listen to some classical music. Conduct along. Pretend you're the guy from the Bugs Bunny cartoon. Developers, if you're listening, I don't know. I can imagine it's a big risk developing a video game and the costs associated, and sticking predominantly with music which is in the public domain might be a safe option because you're not paying all these licensing fees. If this kicks off the way I want it to, and you've got a bit of money in your back pocket and it's all paid off, start to buy some licenses for some modern music, please. I want the DLC pack of string quartets. String quartets doing Britney Spears. I don't care. Just give me something that's a little bit like, and I will conduct the living shit out of it. So I did promise this was a review. My score for Maestro at the end is, timpani roll please, 8. Virtuoso. And so that is that. Omar, would you like to talk about a game, or would you like to talk about a gaming headset next? What floats your boat?
That's entirely up to you. Go ahead. You decide. What do you want to hear about first?
Look, I tell you what, we've got 2 games that we can talk about. Let's say maybe 2 or 3 minutes each. These weren't big titles. Let's knock those out, and then I want to hear all about the 3S from you.
Okay. So, are we talking about Does It Stack?
Yes. You do Does It Stack, and I'll do Blood.
I'll do Does It Stack. Not to sound ridiculous, but my biggest gripe with Does It Stack is that it's not boom blocks. But hey, you already know how I feel about that. That's and it's completely an unfair thing to say. I should not be judging a game by what it is just because it's not a game that I want it to be. That's insane. So let's assume I'm not going to do that.
Okay.
It's going to be somewhere in the back of my head there, but I'm going to try to just get over that.
Have that as context, everybody. A little bit of read between those lines.
Basically, this is my heartfelt plea to Quest developers out there. Look at Boom Blocks. Put it in VR. It is the perfect VR multiplayer game, family fun game. Just do it. Steal Boom Blocks. Put it on Quest. Yes.
Fantastic impressions video of Does It Stack.
Fantastic impressions video of Does It Stack. So, Does It Stack? Does It Stack is basically what it purports to be. You're stacking things on top of each other, but they're random everyday objects, which is where this zany sort of fun kind of slapstick element comes in. Because I don't know, we were playing it, and you had you've got a crate for bottles, and then you've got bottles, and then you've got candy wrappers, and then you've got a bit of cheese, and you've got a fan, things that really shouldn't be stackable at all. Basically, you've got random objects. It's not like geometric objects. It's not like Tetris blocks. It's just random stuff, and it's. A few months ago, this game would have been perfectly at home in App Lab, is what I could say. And I'm not saying that in a derogatory way. I'm not saying that to put the game down. It just doesn't... The concept is cool. It's fun to play with a friend, but it doesn't exactly smack of a full studio production sort of polished situation. The menus are flat. Basically... it feels like a minimum viable product at this point in time, in all honesty. There's a lot of levels, and the level basically starts off with, you've got the table, you've got a certain height you're supposed to reach, you've got a random an assortment of random objects that you're supposed to try to make them reach that high. You try to stack them. The catch is that the items are colored, and items of the same color can't touch each other, or else they basically explode, like opposites attract, and similar things sort of what is it? Repel. There you go. Similar colored things will explode and repel themselves away, and if you put different colors together, they'll stack easily and they don't blow themselves apart. You've also got, in the time that we played, you had that glue gun, so you could sort of, if you want to put something on top of something where it really wouldn't balance at all, you can, glue a little blob of glue onto it, and then you could sort of stick it onto something, and then you could keep doing that. The physics in it are not bad. I wouldn't say
good, actually.
The physics are pretty good. It feels a little bit finicky. I mean, when you're trying to place an object on another thing, just because of, I suppose, the timing of the grip buttons and stuff, it's not as easy as it would be in real life. It's a little more difficult. It's a little more finicky, but I guess that's just the nature of a beast. Although I think it could be improved. I think the handling of the physics and the grabbing and letting go and how things balance, I think it could be less finicky. And maybe it needs...
The game disappears at that point. Like, the finickiness is part of, like, it's a game about stacking odd-shaped objects. If you make it too easy, what's your game? It's like,
I'd like the finickiness to come from the fact that I'm trying to balance irregular objects on top of each other, but not from me trying to put something that has a flat bottom onto a flat surface, but it's a little finicky to put down. I feel that's just VR finickiness.
Gotcha. Right,
and I feel that maybe I'd like things that are easy to do in real life to be as easy to do in VR, and things that are difficult to be difficult. So maybe to compensate for the finickiness of the controllers in VR, maybe the game could have a tiny little bit of assist when you're doing things so that it compensates for how it would be in real life. I'm not sure. But again, fun game to play with friends for a short amount of time, brief little shots. It's not something that you're gonna, there's no story, there's no campaign, it's not something you're gonna spend ages playing and coming back to, but it's a fun game to pull out and play with your friends or with your children or something, family friendly, entertainment. I haven't played enough of it to give it a full review score. I could give it a gut score if you feel we've played it enough.
I don't think we've even played it enough. We did say in episode 1 that we were going to say anything under 2 hours, we can't. And unless you played on, we probably played for about 50 minutes last night, I would say.
Yeah, I didn't play much longer, but it also doesn't strike me as a game where there's going to be massive surprises coming up. It's not like a campaign game where I have no clue what's happening in the next hour. I mean, we know what's happening in the next hour. You've got more random objects. You've got, different heights you're trying to reach. The one thing that might change maybe is, maybe you get something other than a glue gun. Maybe you start getting more
gadgets will start to come in. You've got to assume that there's more depth to it. We can't assume that in 45 minutes we've nailed the full depth of the game. So.
Yeah. So we can definitely assume that there's probably more gadgets coming up, like the glue gun. The glue gun did it come out in the first couple of levels? I think it.
Yeah, it was released by about level 6, I think 6 or 7.
Yeah. So there's probably going to be extra gadgets that come up and that you can play with and sort of change the mechanics a little bit. So fun game, but lacking in polish overall. Like I said, it feels like something that a few months ago would have been happily lodged in the App Store until it was developed a little bit more. I think it could be great, but it needs more polish. It needs more development. It needs a little more VRification in the sense of like the menus, and it just, it's that sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, that sounds that I would agree with all of that. It was a fun 45 minutes, but it didn't make me want to get up early to play it again. So yeah, I think if you're interested, if you like physics-based puzzles, by all means, give it a try. Jump in the comments and tell us what you thought about it. If you played it for longer than 45 minutes, you will become the resident expert as opposed to Omar and I. So we'd be very interested to hear from you.
And I do feel that it should have had voice chat.
So we don't know. This is the other thing. I was thinking about this because if there is no voice chat in that game, that's a huge miss. A huge miss. You and I have had so many problems connecting our voice chat in games. We had that in that Escape Simulator. Like, I'm not willing to go on the record to say that was the game.
Saying that it doesn't have voice chat. Fair enough.
I think if we were to try and get into a game with Doc and we couldn't speak with Doc, that would be categorical. But you and I have had such inconsistent results with meta.
What makes me think it doesn't have voice chat is that if you look at the options, there was nothing about voice chat.
Yeah, that's fair. But again, I reserve that judgment. If there is no voice chat, huge miss. It was so weird trying to do that in silence because the soundtrack wasn't enough to fill that void. You constantly wanted to be like, no, don't do that one next. I'll do this one next. Trying to communicate through sign language, but you don't have hands. It's just the controllers with laser pointers. I don't know. It was not my preferred. Now, games are done, but what do we play the games upon? Oh, that was cool.
What do we play the games upon? Well,
tell me, Omar.
So, well, you could play them on a regular Quest 3 or a Quest 2 if the game's a little older, I suppose, or if it's not a Quest 3 exclusive, or even if it is a Quest 3 exclusive, you can now play it on the newly available Quest 3S. Now, I did try to investigate. I did email back and ask, what does the S stand for? I'd like to know what the S stands for. And I was told it stands for mystery because nobody knows. So believe it or not, that was the actual response that I got. We don't know what the S stands for. Call it whatever you want. Quest Small, Quest Super, Quest Supreme, Quest, call it whatever you want. It's the Quest 3S.
And the Quest 3 sausage. Excellent.
Call it whatever you want. So honestly, my first impressions are that this is pretty much a Quest 3. It's not. There are differences. Yes, there are absolutely differences. And if you're a veteran VR gamer, you're going to care about the differences. You have a lower resolution, you have a lower PPD or whatever. Like how many pixels, the pixel density is a little bit less. So the image quality isn't going to be as good. And it comes in 128 gigabytes or 256, so you can't go as big as the 3S, the 512 model, for example. You're going to store less games. It's the same processor, but it's the same processor. It's in fact, the battery life is a little bit better because the lower resolution gives you end up getting a slightly better battery life just because the resolution is less. So with a Quest 3, you're supposed to get 2.2 hours of gameplay. With a Quest 3, that becomes 2.5 hours. So, you get an extra, whatever that is, I don't know the fractions, but you get a little bit more playing time with a Quest 3S just because the battery is powering a smaller display at less resolution. Basically, that's what you get. You get better battery life, but less resolution and less pixel density. You get the Fresnel lenses, so they're not the pancake lenses that you would normally get on a Quest 3. Now, is it a lower quality lens? Yes, it's a lower quality lens. Does it substantially degrade the quality of the performance? Does it substantially degrade the quality of the image or how much you're going to enjoy it? Not really. And I did, you know, I did what you'd expect I would do. I put on the Quest 3, I played a game or two, and then I put back on the Quest, you know, I put the Quest 3S on just to see if there's a jarring difference in terms of visual quality, in terms of anything really. And no, it's not a jarring difference. Yes, the Quest 3 is better, but this is, unless you're being really finicky, this is pretty damn close. And pretty damn close at a saving of $200 is not a bad deal. If the point of this is to bring VR to, you know, a wider audience and, you know, more masses as such, then I think it does a fantastic job of doing that. It gives you mixed reality. All of the features that you needed to have are there. It doesn't miss out on any of the killer features of the Quest. You can play Batman on it. You can do mixed reality games on it. The pass-through quality is pretty much the same as it is on the Quest 3 in terms of the, you know, the sensor for the cameras. It's the same. It's the same. I mean, yes, you're seeing it at the end through, again, lower resolution, lower PPD. The FOV is also a little bit less on the Quest 3. The FOV, I think, is around 110 or 107 or something like that. I think 110. Here, the FOV is 90, so you're losing 20 degrees of FOV. If you're... What?
That feels like it would be a big deal. Like, one thing I'll say is I remember when the Quest 3 came out, and I did the impressions for that one. And just like you said, you went from one to the other, one to the other. I did that with the Quest 2 to the Quest 3. Yeah. And I could feel that FOV difference between the 2 and the 3. And so 20 degrees feels like it's a lot.
You'll feel it if you're looking for it. But again, this headset is not made for people who have 4 other VR headsets.
Yeah,
this headset is made to lure people into the world of VR, to introduce a new audience into VR that wasn't willing to try out what may be a fun experience for $500 or $600 as the Quest 3. I think the 512 model was initially priced or something. You're paying $200 less. You can get the 128 version for $300. You can get the 256 version for $400. You're paying substantially less as an entry point into VR. As an entry point in VR, the little niggles that you would notice if you came from a free don't exist. They don't exist.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
They just, you know, you're not going to feel them. So overall, I think it's a really good idea. I think it's a really good
comparison between that one and the Quest 2, because the other big use case you're going to have is people coming from Quest 2 who held off upgrading because $500 is quite a lot. $300 to upgrade and suddenly start getting mixed reality, which, I mean, fine. The Quest 2 does mixed reality. That's another big use case. You're going to get people who want the next round of exclusive.
That's what I was just going to say. It gives you the next round of exclusives as well. You know, you've got a Quest 2, but you can't play Batman. Well, hey, now you can. You know,
and it won't be long before, like we've seen it already in the development cycle. Midway through next year, we're going to start to see more and more games coming out that are Quest 3 only, and that will eventually, over the next 12 to 18 months, will drop Quest 2 completely, and this will be the minimum standard. So, look, I agree with you from a sales point of view, from a marketing, like how do we get more people playing VR? You're right, like this. I think they've made very clever sacrifices. They've made good inclusions, and it really still seems like it's the right sort of product.
Yeah. I think it's just a very smart thing to do. Physically speaking, other than the internals, there's very little difference. You've got a dedicated pass-through button here that may or may not have been inspired by Apple Visions Pro, you know, where you have that dial that phases in and out of reality. So this one doesn't.
May or may not indeed.
Yeah, this one doesn't give you any gradual transition. I mean, it does a quick dissolve, but it's not like you can control the range of immersion like you would in an Apple Vision Pro. But basically, you now have a dedicated button. On the Quest 2, you know, you did the double tap. On the Quest 3, you did the double tap on your head. Here, you have a dedicated button for it. So again, it may be more consumer friendly. You know, give something that you don't have to remember so much because it's physically there as a button. But yeah, I think they did a really good job. And in terms of head straps, you get, of course, the default head strap, which is kind of crap. These are almost designed to make you purchase the accessories. The other head straps or the third-party head straps or the head straps of Metacells. However, it is exactly the same arm. So if you've got a head strap from for a Quest 3, any head strap will fit this. It's not as if it's a different design. It's not as if you need its own special head strap. If you get any of the Quest 3 compatible head straps, it'll work. So
I mean, I would be, if they didn't make it sideways compatible with that
would be
generation, be up in arms. You have to buy another Bobo. No.
Yeah, exactly. So overall, I just think it's a really good deal for people who are new to VR. It gives people a chance to try full standalone VR at the latest iteration of the Quest at $300, and I just think that's a good deal.
Sweet viewers, we are still getting the hang of moderating ourselves for time, and we are running towards the end of the time, but we did promise you that we wanted to discuss the thing that you wanted us to discuss, and that is, which flat games would you love to see ported over into VR? Now, this would ordinarily be something that we could probably spend an hour talking on by itself, but
easily,
for constraints of this particular format, I'm going to say, Omar, do you have a top 3? Do you have a top 3 locked and loaded and ready to go?
Can I say Power Stone 1 and 2?
The Power Stone franchise. But how would that work in VR? Why would that be better?
I don't care. I know it's not an ideal candidate for VR because it's a third-person game and you're seeing the whole arena and you're playing in it. But when I imagine, so what? You get Moss in VR and you're not playing in first person, but you're seeing the mouse running around and it's cool and it's cute. And I want Power Stone. I want a new iteration of Power Stone, and if it takes VR to put it in, sure, why not? I love Power Stone. I love Power Stone in VR. But yes, it's not an ideal VR candidate. I'm cheating. If we're talking real VR candidates, I will go for, my God, I keep forgetting the name. The one with the free sensors, the stealth game.
Oh, Splinter Cell.
Splinter Cell. I want Splinter Cell. How
close did everybody come? And I think at this point, knowing that it was in development and then pulled, I don't think you're ever going to get it.
I can't believe they pulled it. Splinter Cell would be perfect for VR. I just don't understand why they pulled it.
Neither do I.
I want Splinter Cell.
I'm not a fan of the old stealth games. So for me, that one was announced and then later shelved, and I was like,
I know.
See, I think Power Stone might be okay if you were to reimagine how to play it. Now, you mentioned Moss, for example. Now, I didn't please everybody don't come at me for this, okay? I didn't like Moss. I'm the only person in the world who didn't like Moss, but I loved the Moss world. And then when they gave us Glassbreakers, now Glassbreakers, I don't speak about it nearly enough. It's in my top 3 games. I love it. I love it. I am constantly upset that I can't play it because it was taken for further development. But there's something about that control system of you've got that top-down way of looking at things. Well. But it's really visceral, like that. You don't just kind of point and click. You have to drag and you move and you trace patterns around the thing. Maybe something like Power Stone could work with cool controls like that, where it's not just using your thumbsticks. Like do you remember Quantar, which was like that Smash Brothers-y style game, and all it was
you need to move your character really quickly in Power Stone. I don't think manipulating him the way you're saying, like in Glassbreakers, would work. But maybe. now that if I had a third candidate in mind that just came to me, Control, console game Control would be incredible in VR.
So I've not played
abilities and all that.
I've not played it because if you remember from our first episode, I stopped gaming for a number of years in 2013. So I missed a lot of games that came out on flat screen. But I've heard people liken some parts of you say synapse, I say synapse to Control. And I remember Joyway, when they were working on Outlier, there were people who were watching early footage of that and going like, oh, cool, that looks like Control. So things like that where you use powers. I mean, the one that I always think of when this topic of conversation comes up, the first thing that comes into my mind is the Infamous series. And I think because, again, I love fast movement games in VR as well as gesture-based magic or gesture-based powers. so much of what can be done in Infamous, I think, could easily be adapted to work really well in VR, both in terms of the movement features of that game and the powers. I remember playing it at one point at my cousin's place and like throwing out an energy ball and then guiding it to come back, and like there was a guy behind cover and I kind of went around and whacked him in the back. Doing that in VR where you're doing it with your hand and then shooting, like, oh, come on, man, that would be amazing. Like, that is, for me, Infamous is the game, or that is the IP that I would kill to see come into VR. Do you know what else I'd love? And I still don't know how. I don't know how to make it work, but I lay awake at night sometimes trying to work out how this could be done.
Which?
Street Fighter 2. If you could do a really good version of a fighting game like that, where Hadouken, a little bit of like the physical, like getting combos down, like trying to remember, like
Why 2?
Street Fighter 2.
Why 2? Not, they were up to like 6 now or something.
Because I haven't played that, man. Like Street Fighter 2 was my fucking childhood. I have I've watched, my YouTube feed comes up with professional, like top tier Street Fighter 6 players, and I'm like, oh god. But it's essentially the same game though, man. Like, you get it. Street Fighter 2, Street Fighter 3, whatever. Like, I want to chuck a Hadouken and I want to feel like Ken. Okay. I want to be able to do really cool combos that you line up and like, you know, if you break somebody's guard on the first one, if you know the sequence, you can get in and do like a 16 hit combo that ends with you going, oh, you can, and shattering the lights at the top of your house and be like, oh god. Like, I don't know how the implementation would work. I'm keeping an eye on Final Fury, which is currently, as far as I know, the only close to Street Fighter that we've got looming.
Yeah.
They have just put out some blog posts. They've got a Steam Fest demo right now. I can't play it because my laptop is made out of mashed potato, but if you are interested in that style of game, you can check it out on Steam right now. It's available. They got to a certain point in their development and they went, you know what, we've missed it. This isn't the thing that we wanted. And they made the very bold, very brave decision to go back and start again on basic mechanics. Now, I haven't played it. I don't know if the new approach works or not. I actually did do some testing for them a while ago on their first iteration. I will be very, very interested to see what this new iteration is going to be like. But in terms of what would I love to see, give me some good gesture-based mechanics and fast movement, like, for example, Infamous. Give me some sort of some way of repeating that PvP. So, you know, the other thing, sorry, I know I'm bouncing around, the Unspoken. Now, the Unspoken was a...
You would kill for a port of Unspoken.
Oh, God. But, I mean, that's not this particular topic of conversation. Yeah. But in terms of the same thrill that you get from PvP, from Street Fighter, the Unspoken was the best. Like, if that had an active player base, I would still play it every single week. I used to play it in a small community. Like, we'd have our sessions. It was essentially a dead game. And I would go on and I would meet up with the other wizards and we would battle. And it was...
The closest to it in gameplay mode, I think, is One's Alliances.
Yeah, but it's also not. Like, you know, you've got... It is the closest, but that's like saying if the world consists of 3 things, one of them is a shoe, one of them is an apple, and one of them is a pineapple, going, well, I guess the closest to the apple is the pineapple.
Yeah.
It's they're not the same. But yeah, so that sensation of me versus that opponent throwing powers across an arena, the Unspoken had it dead to rights. And if Sony hadn't been so greedy and bought Insomniac, we could actually be playing it right now. But they did. They took it away. They took my baby. They also took my chances of getting a quest port of Stormland. No, that's gone as well. Fine, Sony. And now they just make Insomniac just make what do they do? It's
Spider-Man, and now they're doing Wolverine, I think, or whatever. Yeah.
So, sweet viewer, I hope that answers your questions around what we would love to see. Please jump into the comments, because I don't care what Omar wants to see. I want to know what you want to see. What would be the franchise, the IP, the specific game, hell, even what is the genre that you would most like to see represented in VR that is not currently there, jump into the comments, tell us all about it, like, subscribe, do that business.
The question I'd like to phrase, or the same question you asked, but the way I'd like to phrase it is, what game would make non-VR players buy a VR headset?
Ooh. I mean, I think we're coming up to that pivotal moment, like Arkham. Let's see if it works. Like, we don't know for sure. We can maybe tell you next week, actually.
Yeah.
And this segues really nicely because we do have to outro. I'm once again late to pick up my kids. Next week, what can you expect to hear from us? First of all, I won't be here next week. It'll be Omar and Doc, I'm hoping, or Omar by himself. But sadly, I'm going to be overseas. I will not have played Batman, but hopefully Omar will. So next week, we should be able to tell you a little bit about Batman, although I'm sure that will get its own full review. On the docket for releases next week, this is not to promise we're covering all of these, but Band Space releases next Thursday. Vendetta Forever releases next Thursday. I'm going to try and record a session before I leave for my holiday that Omar can snip in, because I have played that and I do want to talk to you about it. And then there are two other games that are on my list, but they do say that they've not been announced. So I can't necessarily... One of them is a hand tracking game, and the other one is... I'm confused why it's a game, and I'm just going to leave it at that. So without any further ado, sweet viewer, we will bid you a fond farewell. I hope you've enjoyed episode 3. I hope you come back eagerly for episode 4. I'd like you to tell me all the things, tell Omar all the things in the comments, and I will see you in 2 weeks once you've all been playing Batman, Arkham Shadow, and I have been on a road trip with 2 car-sick children. Farewell and happy gaming!